In manufacturing, we look for tools, and then sometimes that tool just becomes the tool we're using all the time. And a hammer, when you carry that around, you can be looking for a nail. But when you're working with individuals in leadership and manufacturing, we have to be more agile in the tools that we're using and how we're approaching others. And you all know that I'm writing a book about how results come from deeper conversations, not telling people what to do. So I looked around and I thought, what's other recent books out there that are doing well? And I found a book called Beyond the Hammer. What a great title. And I thought, hey, not everything's a nail. Bought the book, read it, got it on Audible. I wrote a book report on it. It's on the website, and it's incredible. And I have the author on the show today. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Trevor, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And yeah, great analogy, by the way.
So Brian, you started, scaled, and sold several businesses and home services where the hammer comes from, and you can explain that. But I found your book, Five Pillars. It was a parable, and then the second half, you digest how to use it, and how does one come to put this all together in the book? What inspired you here?
Yeah, what a great question. Well, first of all, it was a process. It was an absolute process. When I started writing the book, I knew I had something to say, right? And I wanted to, and the motivation behind it was I wanted to make an impact in the people who read it, to if I can help improve someone's leadership or management styles, you're also improving the lives of the people that work for them. And that comes home with those people, and it ends up at somebody's kitchen table. So I thought I can make a positive impact in the lives of a manager. Then you know what, the mission of the book was accomplished. So when I started writing it as like a normal leadership book, and I started thinking this is just another leadership book. So I
Hmm.
wanted to make it stickier and approachable and actionable, and that's why I came up with a parable. And it was quite the challenge coming up with one, but I think it came out really good. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, fantastic. And there's not that many great parables, right? When I pulled your book up, Patrick Lencioni, Five Dysfunctions as a Team came up beside it. Not a bad book to be, beside yours. You're in good
Yeah,
company.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
and I think, readers are looking for something different to digest, and the way you did that was
Yeah.
artful. And so one of the first areas that really resonated for me, and I think for manufacturing leaders, was one of your quotes here, and I got your book here, and one of your pillar three was leaders are aware of the echo of their voice.
Yeah.
First of all, you can unpack that, but I want to know how you came up with that.
Yeah, I've seen it over time, and I've been guilty of it myself. Is that it's so interesting that the team will decide what type of day they're having based on the type of day that the leader is having. If the leader is stressed out, or if the team is going to be uncomfortable in that environment, and you're not going to get the best out of people when they're afraid to even talk to the leader. And I think there are a lot of different types of echoes. It's beyond just how I feel and how I communicate. It's what do I do, right? I think it's a lot about the echo of being present as well. I mean, we're on a podcast right now, and imagine for a second that if I say, hold on a minute, I got to grab this phone call real fast, or I start texting with somebody while I'm on a podcast, you'd be like, Brian, what do we do? We're on a podcast here. What are you doing? And we would never
Mhm.
think to do that. And yet we do that all the time when we're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody or in a meeting. We get distracted. We're looking at our phone. We're interrupting dinner with our family to take a phone call. I think it's about being present because it sends a very good echo, both in business and at home. So it was a point that I just kind of wanted to make.
Yeah, when we show up, people are gonna emulate our behavior, right?
Right?
And culture is just behavior, which is repeated, and that becomes your culture. So yeah, that whole echo of the voice, knowing that if you're not wanting to see the current behavior you have or the current language, maybe you need to just kind of reflect on what kind of language are you using.
Yeah, and in many ways, leaders model the way for the rest of the team, and they create an environment and an energy amongst their team. And we have to decide what kind of energy do we want to create. If I come into work and I'm stressed out and I wear my stress on my sleeve and everybody feels it, that's how the team is going to behave. And it also gives the team the opportunity to be stressed out. And then what happens from that is what we tend to tolerate, we actually attract more of. If and it's just interesting in business in general. If you think about maybe you're on a Zoom meeting with your team and maybe a couple of people have their cameras off. And if we don't speak up about that, I promise you the next meeting, there'll be more people with their cameras off because I guess having your camera off is okay. And,
Yeah.
all of these things send an echo. They send an echo about a belief system, about culture, about all those things.
I wonder, you said, you mentioned yourself, Brian, like your own experiences. Was there a certain moment for you where you had your echo and it wasn't what you wanted to hear? Did you hear your voice at some point?
Yeah, the I think that the environment that I had created early on in my business, where I was certainly the bottleneck, right? And certainly there were people waiting from a decision from me so they can go about and do their job. And just
Mm.
not a sustainable way to build a business. But I also started thinking about what is the echo that was sending, right? What message am I sending to the team? Well, I'm sending a series of messages. First of all, that I'm the bottleneck, but also that I don't trust anybody else to make decisions, I guess. So I really had to examine what energy and vibe am I bringing to my team based on how I go about my day. Now, in all fairness, it's not that you don't sometimes feel stressed out as a leader, but there's a difference between feeling it and showing it. And who do you express that to? Look, if somebody's having a bad day, don't have a bad day with your team. Call me, call you, right? I know you'll always take somebody's phone call. Call us, dump on us, but don't dump on your team. And I think that's just really important.
Yeah. So you started, talk about your business a little bit. And maybe was there some earlier, challenges? Like just for the listeners, you have a large operation that you grew and sold. So just give the listeners, a little bit of that scale, and what are some of the adjustments you needed to make in order to scale the way you did?
Yeah, sure. So I started my home improvement company, my first home improvement company in Appleton, Wisconsin, in the back of a friend's warehouse on a plastic folding table with $3,000 in cash. And look,
Awesome.
I made a lot of mistakes trying to grow a business, but it ended up being three separate businesses. By the time 2022 rolled around, I had 600 employees and we were doing about $150 million a year in revenue.
Wow.
So it was a great business. It was really great businesses. What I learned though in that journey, I had this epiphany, Trevor, and I didn't write about this in my book, but I thought I'd share it with you. My epiphany was that I was sitting out on the front porch with my wife, and we're drinking a glass of wine in Appleton, and my epiphany was that when the community's in a better place and the business is in a better place, we're in a better place as obviously, and when the business isn't in a good place, I'm not in a good place. And if I want to grow the business, my epiphany was that the ceiling of the business was directly connected to the ceiling of the people on the team.
Mhm.
That if I really want to grow the business, I have to focus on growing the ceiling of the people on my team first. So it starts there. In fact, where that first pillar, belief is transferable, comes from is the concept that if I want to raise somebody's ceiling, they first have to know that they're actually capable of accomplishing that. And because a lot of times people don't feel that they have the ability or that but when a leader sees something in somebody and is able to express that and encourage that and nudge it along, all of a sudden the people start to realize, wow, I never knew I could do this. And what's so fun about it is as you grow people, I think you're giving them more than just a job and you're giving them more than just a career path. You're actually becoming a pivot point in their life, a mentor that they'll look at you as transformational, a story that they'll always remember. Then I think that's a real cool opportunity.
Oh my goodness. And we know that's cool. I mean, the listeners can feel it listening to you right now, Brian. We also know it's not always common in manufacturing, right? Because we're focused on today's results. We're going from meeting to meeting. We're on the shop floor. We're got to break down. We're trying to keep the operation running. And you and home services are
Yep.
had massive scale. You had it in you as the top of the organization, because that's where it starts. Obviously, people reading your book will have a better chance of doing that now, and I highly recommend they get it. What is it in our whole society that leaders miss that? What you found?
Yeah, we regardless of industry, right? Regardless of
Yeah.
industry, managers and leaders are chasing the result today, right? Everybody's chasing the result today. And in that process, we tend to communicate in a very transactional way. Where are we at with our numbers? Where are we at with our KPIs? What are we doing? This,
Mhm.
that. So it tends to be very much a transactional type of environment that we're creating. But we know that if you really want to grow people, you have to create relationships with them. They have to believe in you, that you have to believe in them, they have to trust you. All of these things that don't necessarily live in the same place as a transactional conversation. So it's really about stretching beyond that, and simple ways to do, whether it's in home services or manufacturing. It's how often do we actually talk about our customer in our meetings? To me, I think when we
Mm.
start bringing in our customer, and whether you're making a widget for a bigger purpose, what is that bigger purpose solving? What problem is it solving? What's the benefit of it? That people feel like it's not just a widget. Maybe at this rung in manufacturing it is, but much further down the supply chain, it's something very meaningful to somebody. And
Mhm.
when we start to connect those things as well, especially to KPIs, then I think you really start to change the dynamic of the conversations you have with your team.
And you're getting on a scale here, Brian, where you're selling a lot of these books, you're talking to different people, and you're having these conversations. When you're talking to your readers and people that you've worked with, what's making it click for people? Like when you see people starting to see this shift, where's it
Yeah.
starting?
The I think when people realize that there's an amazing feeling when you have results developing somebody else, right? When you can, as I write about in the book, sometimes we have to have our manager hat on, and sometimes we have to have our leadership hat on. It's not two different people. It's not that
Mhm.
that person's a leader and that person's a manager. We get to be both. Sometimes we have to be a manager and navigate the day-to-day complexities of the business, but other times, if we're really trying to grow the capabilities of somebody on your team, well, that's a leadership skill. That's really about leadership. And we have to, people need to learn, what does it mean to be a good leader? A lot of times we put managers in roles and they don't even understand what
Yeah.
leadership is, or a model to follow. And that's what I tried to do. So I've gotten tremendous feedback, really positive feedback on the 10 practices of high performing managers, because it kind of gives people a roadmap that and triggers, so they know, how am I as a manager doing a good job? How am I?
Mm.
Because it's easy to measure the KPIs. It's very, very difficult to measure the personal growth of the people on your team. So
Yeah. What's measured gets done, and that's harder to measure.
yeah, that's right.
So yeah, that makes sense because I'm writing on my chapter right now about time, right? Just how we're using our time and that the urgent versus the important.
Yeah,
So it's a good point that maybe I need to think about is expectations of how we use our time. And if we don't know what that good leader looks like, then we may be spending our time in the wrong areas. And it's easy to spend it on the urgent because you've got lots of people coming to you. But rarely do you have maybe someone coming to you saying, "Hey, could we spend an hour on my personal growth today?" Like
right,
those
right.
conversations aren't happening organically. So, what out of your 10 guides there, what's helping leaders today refocus their time, like you're saying, Brian?
Yeah, well, the first practice is to be an effective coach and mentor first and foremost. But to your point, when it comes to time management and we have this urgent and important stuff that's going on, we might, as leaders and managers, have these great aspirational goals of what we want to accomplish with our career, with our own personal growth, with our team.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at our calendar, does it reflect that? Right? Because what happens is our calendar really exposes the lies we tell ourselves about what's important. I mean, our calendar tells the truth. So
Yes.
what we want to do is we want to align, what do we really want to accomplish, and does our calendar represent a good reflection of that?
Mm. That we hide behind the lies and then we open the calendar, it's the truth. Right? Yeah,
It
it's
is
how
the
we spent
truth.
our time. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, because that's I see leaders that want to impact other people and they
Sure.
know it's important. And then they come in the next day and then all of a sudden 8, 10 hours are gone and we miss that opportunity. So you as having such a busy role, how did you start making that priority for yourself? Like when did your calendar start to change?
Yeah, well, I had to first start to shift and make sure I'm if if with all the appointments that I'm scheduling, am I scheduling an appointment with myself first and foremost? Do I have
Mm,
any time in my calendar where it's me working on me? And is it a sacred time slot, or does it get eaten up by some urgent and important thing that comes your way? So I think that's I think the first thing that has to happen. But then the second thing is that look, we know stuff happens in business, right? And we know the firefighting takes place. And often what happens is one-on-ones with people are the first thing to get kicked out of a schedule or rescheduled, and because you have some other urgent thing taking its place. Now that might be okay for
mm,
you, but that really stinks for that other person because that's their sacred time. And I think how we have a one-on-one, and I had this thing where people would, I didn't open the whole open door policy thing. the,
yeah.
the, the downside of that is people come at you with all these crazy things all the time that have nothing to do with what I'm working on right now. It's, oh my gosh, I got to tell you about this crazy customer we had. And my response would be, hey, save it for if it's really important, I want to hear it. But otherwise, I really want to pay attention to it. Save it for our one-on-one. Keep it there.
Mhm.
And during our one-on-one, then the door is closed, the phone is off and upside down, and this is your time. And we go back to kind of being present again, right? How do I make this
Yes.
all about you? This is your time. And so when we schedule those moments with our team, we have to treat them sacredly because it's really all about them. And I think that's an
Mm.
important piece of leadership.
Wow. If you're listening right now, you're driving into work. I mean, if you can just look at your calendar today and just say, hey, where have I booked time for myself? And I like Brian that you got to do the self-awareness. You got to spend some time with yourself first and kind of reflect on how
Yeah.
am I impacting that? And then, have you ever had a leader, talk to them? Well, people don't care about the performance reviews that much anyways. It's like, I think that's a myth. I think
Yeah,
people do
that's a big myth.
care.
Yeah. People want to know how their performance is being measured too, right? They want to understand that how do I know at the end of the day when I go home and put my head on the pillow that I had a good day? I think there's a lot of vagueness to how people's performance is actually being measured. And then what tends to happen is the manager leader is having conversations not around the metrics, but around maybe personality. Now, I do think that there are two things that a leader should bring to the table. Number one, make sure everybody has a way of measuring performance, individual performance, but also that there's a team vision statement. Like a company can have a vision statement, but I think it's really important that every team has a vision statement. The vision statement should be aspirational. How do we as a team win? What behaviors are required from the team in order to be successful? Like what's important to the team? A real strong team vision statement. So then when we're having one-on-ones with people, yeah, we can talk about how they're doing with their KPIs, but we can also talk about how their behaviors are actually aligning to the team vision statement. And I think that's how you build both culture and performance at the same time.
And that's consistent with some other guests I've had on here regarding like purpose. Like, what's our purpose? What's our vision? You can call it what you want, but really, what's the anchor of why we're all
Right.
here together? So I appreciate that, Brian.
Yeah, because if there isn't one, and if somebody else is making widgets across the street and they're paying 50 cents more an hour, well, they're going to go there because
Yeah.
people want more than just a job. And I think in many ways they want to feel valued and appreciated and heard, and they want an opportunity to grow. Maybe there isn't an opportunity for them to grow right now in another department,
Mhm.
but you know what? If you're investing in them and you're coaching them and mentoring them, they're going to feel really good about their day.
So there's a listener right now, and they're thinking, Brian, I see my people every day. I connect with them every day. If they've got something, I talk to them about the performance in general. I don't need to do a specific one-on-one and
Yeah.
dedicate time to that. How do you respond to that, Brian?
Well, again, there's a big difference between having a one-on-one if somebody is on the line and talking to them and how's everything going? Oh, it's going good. That you're going to hear these very surface level answers, but how are they really doing, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
What what do you need from me as a manager that you're not getting? What's one mistake we're doing in this company that we should be looking at? Where do you want to take your career? What are you chasing in life, and how can we connect what you do here
Yes.
to that other thing that you're chasing? These are important conversations that don't happen on a line. They should happen, in my opinion. You create a special moment for these people. Really bring them aside, make their moment special, and they'll greatly appreciate it.
Make the moment special for the other person. It's
Correct.
not about you. So,
That's right.
so that just clicked for me because it's kind of like, okay, so maybe the leader feels confident that they have good connection and they support their team, but it's not about the leader. It's about how do you make it special for them? How do you make that? Yeah, I'm not going across the street for a buck an hour because, man,
Yeah.
Brian sits down with me every couple of weeks. He understands what I'm doing outside of work. It's connected to the values. I get attention and it make me feel special here.
Look, leadership isn't about us, but it does begin with us, right?
Mhm.
But it can be measured based on, how your team performs both in your presence and in your absence. And to get the most out of a team, they have to be really bought into to more than just a KPI and more than just a widget.
Got to throw a couple of my favorite quotes from your book.
Yeah. Yeah.
How your team thinks about things, their mindset affects how they feel about things. How they think and feel impact how they act and their behavior.
Right. And all of those things, by the way, how people think and feel, how they, and it comes down to, like, managers do things like training, hiring, terminating, coaching, public recognition, how the manager does that, or they don't do that stuff, right?
Mhm.
But how the manager does that affects how the people on the team think about the organization, and how people think affects, like you said, how they feel, and think and feel affects how we behave, whether we show up on time, whether we give it
Mhm.
our all, whether we're open to coaching. All of these things affect team performance. Organizational performance begins with how the people on the team think and feel.
And that gets missed. My favorite saying that I repeat on this podcast is how you show up impacts on how people feel, and how you make them feel determines extent to which they can engage with you. I think that's why I resonated with your book, because I think that parable format, with those pillars, it's going to be easy for leaders to digest it and then
Yeah.
apply it, because you're really kind of laying it out there in a format that's digestible. And obviously I'm excited about it because, like, this is where leadership is today. Right, this is
Yeah.
where you need to be if you want a competitive advantage in manufacturing and you want to reduce your turnover. It is how you show up. And I just appreciate the tools that you're giving us today, Brian.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I did. I wanted to make it approachable, but also highly actionable, right? So, okay, it's great to have a theory, but what do I do today? How do I go into the office today? And one thing that I write about in the book is the concept of an exit interview versus a stay interview. We might think that we have some kind of a culture in our business, but how do we inspect that culture? And if you're leading a team in your business today, and sitting at your desk right now or driving to work, as you were saying, Trevor, look, you can get a good pulse on the business by asking four questions of your team. Number one, what makes you want to come to work every day? Number two, what would one
Mm.
day make you want to leave? Number three, right? Right. Number three is, what is one thing that the organization is doing wrong today? And number four is, what is one thing you need from your manager that you're not getting? When we start asking those kinds of
Ooh.
questions, it opens up a great dialogue with people, and it's called a stay interview. Instead of an exit interview where people are leaving and then it's an autopsy, let's find out why they're staying instead of why they're leaving.
Ah, that's it. I mean, just those. We'll put those questions in the show notes. Obviously, they're in the book, but that's mind shifting, right? That
Yeah.
changes the conversation. That changes the relationship that you have.
And it shows that you actually care, right? You care to ask.
Hmm.
And that's a big deal. When people care, if you care to ask, that says a lot.
And the when you're asking, and if you're listening, you'll know what to ask next. Because I mean, you've given them some framework with questions, but you can just say, "Hey, say more on that. Like, where does that come from?" And those second and third questions just take
Yeah,
you to a
that's right.
place like you said, if you're out on the shop floor and you're just having a conversation how it's going, that's not going to come around. But what you're saying, it will, in a room when it's separate and you've booked some time, you've had the discipline to do that.
Yeah, and while the CEO and the executive leadership team high up in the rungs of an organization might create a mission and vision and have a desired culture, it's truly the managers that are the custodians of the company's culture. They truly
Mhm.
are. And in knowing that and look, I think culture is such a point of differentiation when you talk about in order to win as a team, culture. We used to have a saying in our business because I'd give tours to anybody that even if I competed with them, I didn't care. Because if you want to copy our performance, you first have to copy our culture and what goes on inside of our people's heads, because that's our point of differentiation, right? And your culture matters, and your culture is also shaped by the lowest level of acceptable behavior, which goes back to what we tolerate, we tend to attract more of. So when we have an underperformer on our team, we have a responsibility to the rest of the team to coach that person up, whether it's through KPIs or whether it's through behaviors and alignment to the overall team vision statement.
Mm.
We have a responsibility to do it.
We talk about connecting the top to the shop and manufacturing, and that's truly what you're doing. And I appreciate your confidence, right? Just yeah, come on in. If you can copy what we're doing, then that'll make the world a better place.
That's right.
Because it's going to take you a lot to catch up with us. And if you're continuing to do that, you're continuing to have the conversation. Last time I'll quote you: every team member will determine what type of day they're going to have based on what type of day the leader is having.
That's
And
right.
that resonated with me because how we are showing up, it is affecting everything. Brian, you changed the culture in your organization or grew it because of your own behaviors, how you were showing up, and you were interested in others. And I could imagine, man, if Brian's interested in me, I'm interested in other people too. And that started rolling.
For sure. We want to believe in ourselves, and we want to believe in each other, right? And when you can get a team to believe, when we get members of the team not just to believe in themselves, but to believe in each other, and to recognize that everybody has a role. Leadership isn't just for the leader. Leadership is for everybody in the organization. They all have an opportunity to make an impact in somebody else. And I think that's such a cool opportunity for everyone. It's
Mm.
just really cool.
Ryan, you're very cool that you responded to me in a cold reach out, just saying, "Hey, appreciate your book. Love to have a conversation with you and share it on the listeners." And you replied right away. And that's one of your tips in the book is, "Hey, as a leader, are you getting back to your people?" Right? That's
Yeah.
another way to separate. So right away, I saw, oh, he practices what he preaches in his book. He's real. You're experienced business entrepreneur. You've led people. You've done it. You've put it into this wonderful framework. We'll leave all the links. But where do you want to leave the listeners with today, Brian?
Yeah, I think that look, if you're a manager or a leader, and you might be building widgets, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you go all in on the notion that you're actually a builder of people, that as you start to really see the growth in these individuals on your team, you'll realize, very much like I realized, that the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you finally realize why.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate you coming on
Thank
the
you, my friend.
show. And what's the best
Thanks for
way for
having me.
people to follow you? Is it on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, or I have a website, briangottlieb.com, or you can always find me on Facebook. I'm not a big social media guy, but pick up the book. The audiobook is fantastic, as you know.
Yes.
Let me know how you love it, and I'm always available for a call.
Yeah, for the listeners, the audiobook that just I got even more connected. I mean, I've got the book, I've read it, I've put the highlights into it. And then I was driving, so I wanted to listen to it. But I appreciated hearing your voice, some of your perspectives, and
Yeah.
it just made it more real. And yeah, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.